Sometimes the smallest act of kindness echoes louder than you ever imagine. Ethan Parker whispered to himself as he guided Blaze through the frost-covered woods, the sun barely peeking over the horizon, casting a pale gold light across the icy branches, the wind carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, a quiet rhythm that matched the steady crunch of their boots, Blaze's amber eyes flicking toward every movement, every shadow. Alert and alive with instincts Ethan had long trusted, the German shepherd's fur glinting with silver and cream in the fragile morning light, his ears twitching as he detected the faintest shift in the underbrush, a whisper of motion that told him someone needed help. Ethan felt a familiar weight in his chest, the mix of anticipation and uncertainty that always came before discovery. And there, through the misted veil of winter, the outline of a small cabin appeared, its roof sagging under the weight of snow, smoke curling lazily from the crooked chimney, a sign of life in an otherwise silent landscape. The door slightly ajar, creaking with each gust of wind, and a faint figure moved within, trembling, fragile, yet holding a dignity that spoke of decades endured. Ethan's heart tightened as Blaze padded forward, nose low, ears high, guiding him to the edge of the porch where Martha Whitman, her silver hair catching the pale light, wrapped a threadbare shawl around her shoulders, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. And in that instant, the air seemed to hold its breath, the crunch of snow under their feet and the soft whistle of the wind forming a gentle symphony of tension. Ethan took a cautious step, offering his hand with a warmth that matched the faint golden light, while Blaze circled the porch protectively, the dog's presence a silent promise of safety. Martha's gaze softened as she recognized the intention, a quiet trust building between them. The old cabin exhaling the faint smell of cedar and wood smoke, the walls echoing with years of solitude. And as Ethan moved to help steady her, a gust of wind rattled the door, papers fluttering inside, revealing a hidden envelope tied with faded ribbon, glinting faintly in the morning sun, a secret waiting patiently for the right hands to uncover. Ethan reached down slowly, feeling the rough texture of the ribbon against his calloused fingers, Blaze's tail wagging slightly, anticipation in his amber eyes, the quiet tension of the moment pressing gently against the crisp winter air. And as the envelope lifted from the floor, the weight of possibility settled over them, the hush of the morning amplifying the subtle rhythm of discovery, a heartbeat that seemed to synchronize with the rustle of the pines, the light bending over the snow in a soft, hopeful glow, hinting at the life-changing gift about to unfold and the beginning of a story that would weave courage, compassion, and divine timing into every step they took together. Ethan Parker stepped inside the small cabin, the floorboards creaking under his weight, and Blaze followed closely, nose to the ground, ears flicking at every subtle sound. The winter light filtering through the frosted windows casting elongated shadows across the worn wooden surfaces, the smell of old cedar and faint smoke wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Martha Whitman moved toward the kitchen, her hands lightly brushing the counters as if rediscovering a place she had almost forgotten, her eyes meeting Ethan's with a mixture of gratitude and tentative curiosity. The envelope still clutched in his hands, a small key tucked within the folds of ribbon glinting in the pale sunlight. Ethan carefully placed it on the table, the soft sound echoing through the quiet cabin, and Martha bent down, fingers tracing the delicate paper, feeling the texture and weight of history pressed into each crease. Blaze settled nearby, his broad chest rising and falling with measured breaths, alert yet calm, the amber of his eyes catching the light, as if acknowledging the significance of the moment. Ethan moved to the old bookshelf, dust particles dancing in the slanting rays as he examined the titles and faded photographs, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, realizing that every object, every mark, every layer of dust was a story waiting to be told. The hum of the wind outside against the walls of the cabin, forming a subtle rhythm, the kind that seemed to breathe alongside them, grounding them in the present while whispering of the past. Martha lifted a small photograph, a young couple standing proudly in the garden, the corners curled and the image softened with age, her voice quiet as she spoke of memories and moments shared. Ethan listened, absorbing every detail, feeling the pulse of history and connection that emanated from the room. Blaze nudged the envelope with his nose, prompting Ethan to open it, revealing letters tied with thin ribbons, photographs of friends long gone, and a small ledger filled with handwritten notes and accounts. The ink faded but legible, the words capturing the life Martha and her husband had built. The weight of it all pressed softly against Ethan's chest, a mixture of reverence and anticipation. He turned to Martha, offering his hand, not in haste but in respect, and she placed hers atop his. A silent agreement forming, the morning light shifting, spilling warmth across the worn floorboards, the cabin now feeling alive with presence, history, and possibility. The wind outside whispering through the trees like a gentle voice guiding them forward. Blaze lifted his head, ears pricked, sensing the subtle changes in the room, a reminder that the smallest gestures could awaken profound transformations. And as Ethan began carefully sorting through the contents, making space, clearing the dust, organizing the memories with tender precision, Martha watched, a soft smile curving her lips, feeling the heavy weight of solitude lift just a fraction. The cabin no longer a place of quiet loneliness but a threshold into something new, a gift that had been waiting, patiently, for the right hearts to receive it. The warmth of sunlight, the gentle hum of the wind, and the silent companionship of a faithful dog combining into a moment that felt suspended, sacred, and full of promise. And Ethan Parker, with Blaze at his side, understood that. They were not merely discovering objects, but the legacy of kindness, love, and trust that would quietly guide their lives from this day forward. The afternoon sunlight shifted through the frost-laced windows of the cabin, painting the wooden walls with a soft glow that seemed to breathe life into the room. Ethan Parker carefully unfolded the letters, each one telling fragments of Martha Whitman's long history. The laughter, the quiet evenings by the fire, the tender moments shared with her late husband. Blaze sat beside him, head low, amber eyes flicking between Ethan and the delicate papers, sensing the weight of the stories and the emotions they carried. The wind outside whispered through the evergreens, a gentle accompaniment to the quiet rustle of parchment and the faint creak of the floorboards. Martha moved closer, her hands hovering over the documents, tracing familiar names and dates, her eyes glistening with memories she had carried silently for decades. Ethan offered a reassuring smile, a silent acknowledgement of the trust being placed in him. Together they began to sort the contents, laying out photographs, journal entries, and small trinkets that spoke of a life fully lived yet quietly hidden from the world, each discovery adding layers of connection between them. The cabin feeling warmer, more alive, as if the walls themselves were welcoming the unfolding narrative. Blaze let out a soft sigh, tail sweeping lightly across the floor, and Ethan felt a profound stillness settle over them, a moment suspended in time where past and present intertwined, the sunlight catching the dust in the air, making it shimmer like tiny golden motes dancing in the quiet. Ethan carefully picked up an old photograph of Martha and her husband standing beside a small orchard, the colors muted but the smiles vivid, and he felt the depth of legacy and love captured in that frozen instant. Martha's voice, soft and hesitant, spoke of hopes long deferred, of the small acts that had kept her spirit alive, and Ethan listened with a patience honed through years of service, understanding that this was more than a moment of discovery. It was a bridge between solitude and shared humanity. Blaze nudged a faded ribbon, prompting Ethan to lift it and reveal a hidden key tucked within, the metal cool against his fingers, a tangible link to the secrets and treasures held within the cabin. The air, filled with the scent of cedar, old paper, and winter snow drifting through the slightly open windows, creating a tapestry of sensation that seemed to root them in the now, while whispering of history's past. Together they began to explore the small attic space revealed by the key, each step deliberate, each movement thoughtful, as they uncovered carefully stored keepsakes, the glow of sunlight enhancing the textures and colors of old wood, glass, and fabric. Ethan felt a surge of connection and purpose, realizing that the act of helping Martha had led them to something far greater than he had anticipated. Blaze shifted his weight, ears alert, as though confirming the significance of the unfolding moment, and Martha, watching Ethan and the dog, felt the walls of isolation she had built around herself begin to fall away. the cabin transforming into a space of trust, discovery, and quiet hope. With every small revelation, every shared smile, the atmosphere seemed to pulse with warmth and possibility, and Ethan, understanding the gentle gravity of the day, realized that this was a beginning, a story of connection and grace that would linger long after the winter light had faded. The late afternoon sun filtered through the frosted panes, casting long, warm streaks across the worn wooden floor. Ethan Parker knelt beside a small chest that had remained untouched for decades, the brass latch glinting faintly as he traced its contours with careful fingers. Blaze sitting silently nearby, ears high, amber eyes fixed on the subtle movements, the quiet anticipation almost tangible in the cabin. Martha Whitman hovered, her hands folded lightly, her eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and trust, the scent of old cedar and paper enveloping the room. As Ethan lifted the lid to reveal neatly stacked journals, delicate trinkets, and faded photographs, each item a fragment of a life carefully preserved, the weight of history resting softly on their shoulders. The wind outside whispered through the pines, a gentle accompaniment to the soft rustle of pages and the subtle creak of the floorboards. Ethan picked up a small carved wooden box, its surface worn but polished by the touch of time. Inside lay a key and a bundle of letters, the handwriting precise yet elegant, telling stories of kindness, love, and quiet resilience. Blaze nudged Ethan gently with his nose, as if urging him to read aloud, and Ethan did, his voice low and deliberate, letting the words fill the space, the cabin absorbing each syllable, the golden light catching on dust motes that danced like tiny sparks in the air. Martha's expression softened with each story, her eyes glistening with unshed tears and unspoken memories. Ethan placed the letters carefully on the table, scanning the photographs, noticing the smiles, the gardens, the gatherings, each frame a testament to lives intertwined. And as he did, a sense of purpose grew within him, the gentle rhythm of Blaze's breathing and the warmth of Martha's presence grounding him. The room seemed to expand, filled with the weight and grace of all that had come before. Ethan moved slowly, organizing the contents, handling each item with reverence. Knowing that this was more than a discovery, it was a bridge between the solitude of the past and the shared possibilities of the present. The afternoon light deepened, painting the walls with shades of amber and honey, and every shadow, every glint of metal and wood, seemed to pulse with a quiet promise. Blaze's tail swept across the floor softly, and Martha reached out, placing her hand over Ethan's in silent acknowledgement of the trust and connection forming between them. The gentle creak of the cabin settling mingled with the distant rustle of the forest, a natural symphony underscoring the moment. As Ethan lifted a small, worn envelope tied with ribbon, the paper fragile yet steadfast, and together they began to read, each word drawing them further into a shared understanding, a connection that transcended years of isolation. The warmth of sunlight, the hushed voices of the room, and the steady presence of Blaze creating a cocoon of calm, trust, and awakening. And in that quiet, sacred space, Ethan felt the subtle but undeniable truth that small acts of kindness ripple outward, carrying the power to transform lives. And as the final rays of sunlight fell across the chest and the scattered memories, the cabin felt less like a place of solitude and more like a threshold into a life waiting to be embraced, full of hope, purpose, and the gentle unfolding of grace. As the late afternoon light softened into a gentle amber, Ethan Parker carefully moved through the cabin, tracing the contours of the furniture and the walls with a reverent touch, each piece telling a story of a life lived with quiet strength and care. Blaze padded beside him, his paws silent on the worn floor, ears constantly shifting toward the faintest whisper of sound, the warmth of the sun catching his silver and cream fur, highlighting the disciplined strength of his shoulders and the alert intelligence in his amber eyes. Martha Whitman lingered nearby, fingers brushing the spines of old books, inhaling the faint scent of aged paper and cedar, a subtle smile softening the lines of her face as memories surfaced. Ethan unfolded a small, faded map, its edges brittle and worn, the ink slightly smudged but the details still legible, revealing plots of land, paths through the surrounding woods, and hidden spots that had been forgotten over decades. He laid it carefully on the table, the sunlight dancing across the surface, illuminating the delicate markings. Blaze sat attentively, head slightly tilted as if to understand the significance of the discovery. Ethan guided Martha to sit beside him, and together they traced the routes, imagining the lives that had passed through these places, the quiet moments of laughter, reflection, and labor that had left subtle imprints on the land and the objects they now held. The cabin was filled with a calm hum, the wind outside, carrying the subtle rustle of branches and the distant sound of water trickling over ice, a reminder of the world beyond the walls. Yet within this space, time seemed to bend, creating a sacred bubble of attention, reverence, and discovery. Ethan lifted a small locket, its surface engraved with initials and a delicate flower motif, placing it gently in Martha's hands, her eyes glistening as she felt the weight of it, not just physically but emotionally, a connection reaching across decades. Blaze let out a soft, approving sigh, nudging the edge of a book as if to suggest there was more to uncover. Ethan continued to carefully examine each item, photographing small keepsakes with his camera, noting details in a journal, the light shifting with the fading sun, casting long, warm shadows that seemed to animate the objects, giving them a subtle pulse of life. Martha shared stories tied to each artifact, her voice calm, melodic, carrying a richness that filled the cabin with warmth and human presence. Ethan listened intently, absorbing every nuance, every pause, every inflection, feeling the layers of trust, history, and care intertwine, the quiet companionship of Blaze and the soft hum of the wind outside framing the scene. As Ethan carefully lifted a bundle of letters tied with ribbon, opening them to reveal expressions of kindness, gratitude, and small joys long forgotten, the words seeming to resonate within the cabin, creating a bridge between past and present, between loneliness and connection. And as the final light of the day filtered through the frost-streaked windows, casting a golden hue across the room, Ethan, Martha, and Blaze shared a quiet understanding, a moment of healing, reflection, and hope. The cabin no longer simply a shelter, but a space alive with stories, warmth, and the subtle promise of new beginnings. The evening settled softly over the cabin, the sky outside a pale wash of amber and lavender as Ethan Parker and Blaze moved carefully among the scattered memories, each item they touched carrying a weight of decades, the subtle scent of cedar mingling with the crisp winter air drifting through the slightly ajar windows, the cabin now alive with soft shadows and gentle warmth. Martha Whitman seated by the hearth, hands folded lightly on her lap, her gaze following Ethan as he organized the journals and photographs with deliberate care. Blaze settled at her feet, the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest providing a grounding presence, the sunlight streaming through frost-edged glass catching the dust in the air, making it shimmer like tiny sparks dancing in quiet celebration. Ethan carefully lifted a delicate porcelain figurine, worn but intact, and set it upon a small shelf, the fragility of the piece resonating with the history it represented. Martha leaned forward, tracing a finger along a faded photograph, her eyes glistening as she recalled a summer afternoon in the garden long past. Ethan listened intently, absorbing not only the stories told but the spaces between the words, the quiet sighs and moments of reflection that spoke volumes. Blaze nudged a stack of letters with his nose, prompting Ethan to open them, revealing messages of gratitude and small joys carefully preserved. The cabin seemed to inhale with each discovery, the walls and beams resonating with the warmth of shared presence. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying the faint scent of snow and earth, a natural rhythm that echoed the slow, deliberate cadence of their movements. Ethan and Martha worked in tandem, unpacking boxes, setting items in order, sharing soft words and gentle smiles, the connection between them deepening with every careful placement. Blaze lifted his head occasionally, amber eyes reflecting both alertness and calm assurance. As if acknowledging the subtle magic of the unfolding afternoon, Ethan opened a small, worn envelope containing a handwritten note from Martha's late husband. The ink faded but the sentiment clear, a message of trust, hope, and encouragement that seemed to transcend time. He read it aloud softly, the words filling the cabin with a warmth that spread like sunlight across the floorboards. Martha's lips curved in a faint, reflective smile, her eyes moist with the weight of remembrance and the quiet joy of sharing. The atmosphere of the cabin grew heavier with the presence of history and lighter with the promise of renewal. Ethan carefully arranged a cluster of photographs, letters, and trinkets on the table to tell the story of Martha's life. Blaze resting his head on his paws nearby, watching attentively as if to ensure that each memory was honored. The wind outside, carrying the faint crackle of ice and the soft rustle of branches, blending seamlessly with the quiet, contemplative hum of the cabin interior. And as the last rays of sunlight faded behind the distant trees, casting a gentle twilight across the walls, Ethan, Martha, and Blaze shared a profound silence, a shared recognition of the moments past and the potential for new beginnings. The cabin no longer just a space of solitude, but a sanctuary of stories, trust, and gentle discovery, where kindness, attention, and the careful tending of memories created a quiet but powerful sense of healing and connection that would linger long into the coming evening. The twilight deepened outside the cabin, the last amber glow slipping behind the distant trees as Ethan Parker carefully laid out the remaining photographs, letters, and trinkets on the wooden table, each piece illuminated by the soft flicker of the hearth. Blaze resting alertly beside him, ears pricked and eyes tracking the smallest movement, the gentle hum of the wind outside mingling with the subtle creak of the floorboards, creating a quiet symphony of presence. Martha Whitman moved closer, her fingers brushing lightly over a faded photograph of her younger self tending the garden, a quiet smile touching her lips as memories surfaced with warmth and gentle clarity. Ethan noticed the delicate detail of the handwritten notes tucked beside the photos, the ink slightly faded but the sentiments intact, capturing moments of joy, quiet reflection, and enduring love. He lifted one letter carefully, reading aloud the elegant script, each word carrying the rhythm of a life fully lived. The cabin absorbing every syllable, the air thick with the essence of shared history. Blaze shifted his weight, tail sweeping softly across the floor, the subtle vibrations syncing with the cadence of Ethan's voice. Martha leaned back, eyes misted with remembrance and a soft, serene glow, the sunlight fading through the frost-edged windows casting long shadows that intertwined with the warmth of the fire. Ethan moved deliberately, arranging the objects in a way that told the story of Martha's past, the narrative emerging in patterns of care, trust, and resilience, each item echoing the quiet strength of those who had lived and loved within these walls. The cabin seemed to pulse with a gentle vitality, a sanctuary of memory and connection. The wind outside whispering through the trees like a soft chorus, carrying the scent of pine, snow, and the crisp air of approaching evening. Ethan opened a small, well-worn journal, the pages delicate yet steadfast, revealing notes on kindness, neighborly deeds, and small joys that had rippled through the years. Blaze nudged the journal gently with his nose, encouraging the unfolding of another layer of history. Martha watched intently, her hands clasped together, absorbing the stories and the presence of another who valued these moments, the warmth from the hearth and the soft light blending into an atmosphere of quiet reverence. Ethan continued to read, sharing the experiences, the laughter, and the subtle sorrows embedded within each entry. The cabin filled with an almost sacred stillness, the pulse of life harmonizing between the past and the present. Blaze lifted his head, ears alert to the rhythm of words and movement, the connection between human and dog, past and present, flowing seamlessly. Martha exhaled softly, the weight of isolation lifting, replaced by a gentle sense of belonging and shared discovery. And as the shadows lengthened and the firelight flickered across the walls, Ethan, Martha, and Blaze remained in quiet communion. The cabin transformed from a place of solitude into a haven of warmth, stories, and gentle understanding, each item, each word, each glance weaving together to form a tapestry of trust, memory, and the subtle grace of life's unfolding. Gifts. The first stars began to shimmer faintly in the deepening sky outside the cabin, their light casting a soft silver glow across the frost-covered roof and the surrounding trees. Ethan Parker sat back on the worn wooden chair, Blaze curling beside him with a quiet, watchful presence, the dog's amber eyes reflecting the subtle flicker of the hearth. Martha Whitman moved gently through the room, straightening photographs and brushing away the light dust that had settled on the table, her hands deliberate, each motion carrying a reverence for the memories being honored, the air filled with the faint scent of pine from the forest outside and the warmth of cedar from the cabin's interior. Ethan carefully unfolded another small envelope, revealing a collection of pressed flowers, notes of gratitude, and sketches that spoke of gardens tended, seasons observed, and quiet acts of kindness. Blaze let out a low, approving sigh, tail brushing lightly against the floor as if acknowledging the significance of the discovery. Martha leaned forward, eyes bright with reflection, fingers tracing the delicate edges of a photograph depicting a summer afternoon in the orchard, the sunlight streaming through the frost-covered window, illuminating her face with a soft, golden glow. Ethan gently placed a small wooden box in front of her, its surface worn smooth by decades of handling. Inside, a bundle of letters tied with ribbon that contained the expressions of love, hope, and resilience from years past. He opened one carefully, reading aloud the elegant script, letting the words fill the cabin, the quiet rustle of paper and the soft creak of floorboards harmonizing with the distant sound of wind in the trees. The cabin seemed to exhale, the walls and ceiling absorbing the voices and memories, each item carrying with it the echo of lives lived fully yet quietly. Blaze shifted his weight, lifting his head to listen as Ethan continued to share the contents, the ambient glow of the fading sun mingling with the warmth of the fire, creating a cocoon of comfort and presence. Martha reached out, placing her hand lightly over Ethan's as he held another letter, a silent affirmation of trust and shared history. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, a gentle accompaniment to the slow, deliberate rhythm within the cabin. Ethan arranged the remaining objects, aligning photographs, journals, and trinkets in a way that honored the stories and created a narrative of love, courage, and enduring connection. Blaze rested his head on his paws, eyes half closed but attentive, sensing the completion of a chapter. The cabin transformed from a simple shelter into a sanctuary of memory, warmth, and quiet reflection. Martha spoke softly, sharing anecdotes and insights that gave life to each item. Ethan listened with a steady heart, absorbing both words and silences, the room filled with a sense of continuity and grace, the interplay of light, shadow, and gentle movement fostering an atmosphere of reverence and hope. The forest beyond seemed to hum in quiet agreement, the air thick with the promise of healing and renewed purpose. And as the final glow of the evening light settled across the walls and furniture, Ethan, Martha, and Blaze sat together, enveloped in the subtle magic of the moment, understanding that within this cabin, the past had found its echo and the present was imbued with the quiet power of connection, compassion, and the gentle unfolding of life's hidden gifts. The night had settled over the forest, the sky deep and clear, stars twinkling faintly through the skeletal branches of the pines. Ethan Parker moved slowly through the cabin, each step measured, mindful of the fragile peace that now filled the space. Blaze padded silently at his side, ears flicking at the smallest sound, amber eyes glimmering with quiet awareness. The cabin glowed with the warm, golden light of the hearth, casting soft shadows across the wooden floors and walls. Martha Whitman sat near the window, hands folded gently, her gaze resting on the soft flicker of firelight as she absorbed the day's discoveries and the careful arrangement of her cherished memories. Ethan picked up a small, worn photo album, the edges frayed, the cover smooth from decades of handling, and opened it carefully, revealing images of birthdays, harvests, and quiet evenings, each page a testament to love, resilience, and care. Blaze circled the table once, sniffing at the album with gentle curiosity, then lay down, resting his head near Ethan's foot, a silent guardian of the moment. Martha leaned forward, tracing the images with a fingertip, her eyes moist with remembrance, and spoke softly, sharing anecdotes, the soft cadence of her voice mingling with the quiet hum of the wind outside. Ethan listened intently, the depth of history and emotion filling him with a sense of reverence and connection. He carefully placed the next envelope before her, tied with a faded ribbon. The soft rustle of the paper as she untied it adding a rhythm to the otherwise still air. Inside lay handwritten notes, sketches of gardens, small doodles, and lists of daily joys that spoke of a life rich in unnoticed beauty. Martha smiled, a quiet, reflective smile that seemed to illuminate her entire face, the room glowing with a sense of warmth, trust, and shared understanding. Ethan gently encouraged her to tell the stories behind each note. Blaze's tail flicked slowly in approval, the soft sound of fur brushing the floor adding to the intimate ambience. The cabin felt suspended in time, each breath, each gesture, each word creating a delicate rhythm of discovery and healing. Ethan picked up a small carved box, opening it to reveal keepsakes collected over a lifetime. Buttons from coats long gone, a pressed leaf, a tiny charm bracelet, the weight of memories tangible in the soft gleam of the objects. Martha reached out, her hand hovering briefly before touching the items. The connection between past and present, between shared humanity and quiet resilience, filling the room, the firelight flickering across Ethan's face as he read aloud a letter, the words carrying sentiments of hope, gratitude, and subtle joy. Blaze's ears pricked at the cadence, and Martha's eyes glimmered, a soft, satisfied light, the wind outside whispering against the cabin, a gentle accompaniment to the steady heartbeat of the moment. Ethan arranged the items carefully, creating a narrative of life, love, and enduring grace. The cabin no longer merely a structure, but a sanctuary of reflection, warmth, and connection. And as the stars grew brighter in the sky outside, all three, Ethan, Martha, and Blaze, sat quietly, enveloped in the comfort of shared stories, the gentle pulse of history, and the subtle yet profound promise of tomorrow. A quiet assurance that kindness, care, and attention to the lives of others had created a space where the past and present converged in serenity and enduring hope. The first glow of morning filtered through the frost-covered windows, casting pale ribbons of light across the worn wooden floors of the cabin. Ethan Parker moved deliberately among the carefully arranged photographs, journals, and trinkets, each item now telling a story of connection, history, and enduring care. Blaze stood alert at his side, ears pricked, tail sweeping lightly across the floor as if acknowledging the quiet gravity of the morning. Martha Whitman adjusted a small chair near the hearth, hands resting on the armrests, her eyes following Ethan's movements with a gentle warmth. The air filled with the mingling scents of cedar, old paper, and the crisp winter breeze drifting through a slightly open window. Ethan picked up a bundle of letters tied with ribbon, carefully untangling the knot and lifting each page with reverence. The ink faded, yet the words still full of life, recounting acts of kindness, shared laughter, and moments of quiet reflection. Blaze shifted slightly, nose twitching as he scanned the cabin, alert to any subtle change, the amber of his eyes reflecting the gentle light. Ethan read aloud softly, letting the cadence of the words fill the space, the soft rustle of paper and the gentle crackle of the fire blending into a rhythm of presence and understanding. Martha's lips curved in a faint smile, her eyes glistening as she whispered memories and insights, the cabin feeling alive with the delicate interplay of past and present, every object placed with intention, every sound carrying weight and significance. Ethan carefully opened a small carved wooden box, inside resting a collection of pressed flowers, tiny keepsakes, and delicate charms, each holding a fragment of Martha's life. He handed the items to her slowly, allowing her to absorb their significance. Blaze nudged Ethan lightly, a gentle reminder of the shared journey and the trust they had built. Martha's fingers hovered over the trinkets, touching them with reverence and a soft acknowledgement of the care they represented. Ethan moved to the window, adjusting the curtain to catch the morning light on the photographs laid across the table, the sunlight highlighting details in the images, creating a sense of intimacy and clarity. Blaze lay at Ethan's feet, chest rising and falling with steady, measured breaths, the gentle warmth of his presence grounding the room. Martha traced a finger along a particularly faded photograph, recounting the day it was taken, her voice soft and melodic. echoing lightly across the cabin. Ethan listened, absorbing both the words and the pauses between them, understanding that the silence and reflection were as important as the stories themselves. The cabin seemed to hum with quiet energy, a rhythm of memory, gratitude, and gentle discovery. Ethan carefully placed another letter in front of Martha, the delicate paper trembling slightly in his hands. As she read aloud, the stories unfolding in tandem with the rising sunlight, blazes. Ears flicked at the soft cadence, and together, they shared a quiet moment of reflection and presence, the room filled with the resonance of past joys, unspoken hopes, and the steady warmth of trust. And as the morning deepened, casting soft gold across the cabin walls, Ethan, Martha, and Blaze remained in a calm communion, the past and present merging in a delicate harmony, and the cabin, once silent and solitary, had become a sanctuary of connection, healing, and subtle, enduring grace. Each breath, each glance, each gesture contributing to the quiet affirmation that life's small acts of care and attention ripple outward, carrying with them the promise of renewal and lasting warmth. The sun had risen higher, spilling soft golden light through the frost-flecked windows of the cabin, painting the wooden beams and floorboards with warmth and clarity. Ethan Parker moved slowly among the photographs and letters he had arranged the night before, each piece a fragment of history that now seemed to breathe life into the room. Blaze sat alert beside him, his ears shifting at every faint whisper of wind or creak of the floor, amber eyes scanning the space with calm attentiveness. Martha Whitman followed his movements, fingers lightly brushing the edges of the papers, her gaze steady and reflective, the scent of cedar and winter air mingling with the faint aroma of brewed tea on the small counter. Ethan lifted a carefully folded letter and handed it to Martha, her hands trembling slightly as she traced the ink with reverent care. Blaze nudged a photograph toward Ethan with his nose, prompting him to pick it up and show Martha, and together they examined the images of gardens, family gatherings, and quiet moments that had been captured long ago, the sunlight glinting off the worn corners of the frames, illuminating the details of smiles, gestures, and small objects that had held significance across decades. Martha spoke softly, sharing memories in a gentle, melodic voice, her words echoing in the cabin with the quiet resonance of lived experience. Ethan listened intently, absorbing the stories, the silences between them, and the subtle weight of history pressing softly around them. Blaze shifted slightly, tail brushing the floor, the steady rhythm of his breathing adding a subtle cadence to the moment. Ethan carefully opened another small wooden box, revealing pressed flowers, tiny charms, and delicate trinkets, each item carrying a story of care, joy, or remembrance. He handed them to Martha one by one, her fingers lingering on the objects, absorbing the tactile and emotional resonance, the warmth of the sun shifting, filling the cabin with a gentle radiance, highlighting the dust motes drifting lazily in the air like tiny floating stars. Blaze adjusted his position, resting his head near Ethan's feet, but maintaining a watchful presence, the room imbued with a sense of serenity, trust, and shared purpose. Ethan lifted a small journal, its pages delicate yet strong, filled with sketches, notes, and observations that charted a life of attention, care, and subtle wonder. He read aloud passages describing simple acts of kindness, seasonal changes in the garden, and quiet celebrations of everyday moments. Martha nodded, a faint, reflective smile curving her lips, the cabin absorbing every word, every gesture, the soft light dancing across surfaces and filling the space with warmth, the distant wind whispering through the pines beyond, punctuating the calm, rhythmic cadence of their interaction. Ethan and Martha continued together, arranging letters, photographs, and keepsakes to create a narrative of life, care, and connection. The atmosphere thick with quiet reverence, presence, and the gentle unfolding of understanding. Blaze lifted his head occasionally, ears twitching, amber eyes reflecting the subtle illumination of the firelight. The cabin now fully alive with the pulse of stories, shared attention, and unspoken trust. And as the morning stretched onward, the three of them remained together, immersed in a cocoon of memory, warmth, and the subtle, profound sense that lives, kindness, and quiet attention. when given and received, create a space where healing and connection thrive. The cabin no longer a mere shelter, but a sanctuary of enduring grace, reflection, and hope for what was still to come. The late morning sunlight poured gently through the frost-speckled windows, bathing the cabin in a soft, warm glow. Ethan Parker moved slowly from table to window, pausing to lift a photograph that depicted a sunlit orchard in full bloom, the leaves vibrant and alive. Blaze resting attentively at his side, tail flicking occasionally as he observed the subtle shifts in the light. Martha Whitman adjusted the cushions on a nearby chair, her hands moving with quiet deliberation, her gaze thoughtful and serene as she reflected on the memories captured in the photographs and letters arranged carefully across the room. Ethan opened a small, leather-bound journal, the pages delicate and fragrant with age, revealing notes of gardening, recipes, and reflections that spoke to a life of quiet joy and enduring care. He read aloud softly, the cadence of his voice filling the cabin with a sense of calm and presence. Blaze lifted his head, ears alert, amber eyes following each movement as if understanding the significance of the words. Martha leaned closer, her fingers lightly brushing the pages, absorbing not only the written memories but the subtle energy of the cabin and the people within it. Ethan carefully laid out a small box containing trinkets collected over decades, buttons, pressed flowers, and tiny charms, each a testament to moments of beauty, care, and human connection. He handed the items to Martha one by one, her fingers lingering on each piece, a soft smile touching her lips as she traced the details, the warmth of the sunlight and the gentle hum of the winter wind outside blending to create an atmosphere of reflection, trust, and shared history. Ethan then lifted a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon, opening them with reverence to reveal the delicate script and thoughtful words of gratitude, small joys, and acts of kindness. Blaze shifted closer, nudging Ethan gently with his nose, affirming the careful attention being given to the stories. Martha's voice softened as she began to recount anecdotes associated with each letter, her stories weaving seamlessly into the words Ethan read aloud. The cabin now alive with the layered texture of memory, experience, and emotional resonance, sunlight glinting off the wooden surfaces and the glass frames, highlighting the intricate details and creating a warm, serene glow. Ethan moved to the small bookshelf in the corner, dust motes floating in the sunbeams as he carefully removed and examined old photographs and keepsakes, placing them thoughtfully on the table. Blaze laying his head down for a moment, yet keeping his ears attuned to the faintest creak of the cabin. Martha watched him, a gentle satisfaction in her expression as the presence of Ethan and Blaze transformed the room into a sanctuary of attention and care. The soft rustle of papers, the occasional creak of floorboards, and the faint hum of the wind outside creating a subtle rhythm that underscored the shared presence. Ethan opened another small wooden box to reveal a delicate hand-carved key and a set of old, neatly folded letters, the contents speaking to hidden stories and secrets patiently waiting for discovery. He handed them to Martha, and she carefully unfolded each piece, reading aloud softly, the cadence of her voice mingling with Ethan's earlier readings. Blaze's amber eyes following every gesture and sound, the cabin filled with quiet warmth and reverence. Every item and word connecting past, present, and future, the sunlight shifting across the walls and floors, casting long, gentle shadows, highlighting the depth of connection and trust now shared. And as Ethan, Martha, and Blaze continued to move through the artifacts, reading, touching, and observing, the cabin became more than a home. It became a living tapestry of kindness, care, and enduring human connection, a space where stories, memory, and the quiet power of presence merged to create a profound sense of healing, purpose, and hope for the days yet to come. The afternoon sun slanted through the cabin windows, illuminating the dust motes that floated lazily in the warm air. Ethan Parker moved deliberately through the space, arranging the last of the letters, photographs, and small keepsakes on the table, Blaze resting at his feet, ears flicking attentively, amber eyes following every motion, the gentle scent of cedar and winter air mingling, creating a sense of calm and continuity. Martha Whitman sat in the soft glow near the hearth, hands folded. Lightly, her eyes reflecting a serene mix of contemplation and quiet joy. Ethan lifted a small, weathered envelope, carefully untying the ribbon, revealing folded notes and a delicate key. The contents whispering of histories untold and treasures long hidden. Blaze nudged the envelope with his nose, a subtle reminder of the significance of the discovery. Martha reached out, fingers brushing the fragile paper with reverence, and together they examined each letter, reading aloud the expressions of hope, kindness, and enduring love. The cabin absorbing the rhythm of voices, the soft crackle of the fire, and the distant whisper of wine through the pines outside. Ethan moved gently to place a carved wooden box on the table, inside resting a collection of charms, pressed flowers, and small mementos, each item telling a story of care, attention, and quiet joy. Blaze shifted, laying his head on his paws but remaining alert, his tail brushing softly against the floor as he observed the unfolding moments. Sunlight streaming across the walls highlighted the textures and colors of the photographs and keepsakes, casting long, warm shadows that seemed to dance in celebration of shared discovery. Martha smiled softly, recounting memories that intertwined with the letters, photographs, and trinkets, each story weaving a delicate tapestry of life, connection, and resilience. Ethan listened intently, absorbing the cadence, pauses, and subtle emotions behind every word. The cabin, feeling suspended in a gentle harmony of presence and reflection, he lifted a small journal, its pages filled with observations, sketches, and reflections, opening it carefully, reading aloud the passages of small acts of kindness, daily rituals, and simple joys that had quietly shaped a life. Martha nodded, her eyes glistening, absorbing both the spoken words and the subtle energy that seemed to ripple from the pages. Blaze's ears twitched, tail flicking in acknowledgement of the importance of the moment. Ethan moved with careful deliberation, arranging the remaining keepsakes to form a narrative that honored the past, while opening the space for present connection and understanding. The firelight flickered across the walls, highlighting each object, each page, and each photograph, the shadows creating a soft, living texture that added depth and warmth to the cabin. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, a gentle accompaniment to the quiet rhythm of breathing, movement, and attentive listening within. Ethan, Martha, and Blaze shared a profound silence, a communion of presence, trust, and reverence for the stories laid before them. The cabin transformed from a mere shelter into a sanctuary of history, care, and enduring grace, each item and each word resonating with warmth, kindness, and the subtle promise of new beginnings. And as the afternoon light softened into a golden glow that stretched across the floorboards, they understood that the quiet acts of attention, care, and presence had created a space where memory, connection, and hope converged, leaving a gentle but lasting imprint on their hearts. And the cabin, once still and solitary, now pulsed with life, warmth, and the enduring resonance of stories cherished, shared, and fully honored.